Hi, I'm Christina Morgan. Welcome to the West, A Narrative History, Chapter 4, The Hellenic Era. This is part 5 of a 5-part series. In part 1, we went over the effect of the Persian Wars on the Athenian democracy. Part 2, we went over the Peloponnesian Wars. Part 3, we talked about the arts and intellectual life. Part 4, we talked about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And now in part 5, we are talking about the arts and politics and tragedy and comedy in context. So, the arts and politics were important in Greek life. They've greatly impacted Western civilization. Hellenic art was public. It was designed to educate and inspire citizens, to impress allies, and to intimidate enemies. It was designed to be very public and very important. There was something called red figure ware. It's a type of pottery. It depicted realism. It gave knowledge. It's how we learn a lot about history of that time. The sculptors used classicism. They had ideal types, so it wasn't a reflection of a realistic body image. It was an ideal form. The architecture seen in temples were very classic, important architectural features. And the temples were backdrops for polytheistic worship. They worshipped the Olympians with Zeus at the head of the family. The families maintained household shrines. And many of you may be familiar with the Olympian gods. This is Percy Jackson series. This is the gods that are in that series. So we use the Greek gods a lot in our culture as far as reference points. They also had something called mystery cults that they used as part of their religion for some people. They believed in magicians. They put a lot of trust in omens and oracles. There was something called the Oracle at Delphi, which was an important place you could go to kind of try to get a prediction as to what was going to happen. So had a lot of faith in what could happen or trying to find out what might happen, which in the last section we talked about this change towards science and logic and thinking. That's why it was such a big shift, because so many people believed in this, in oracles and omens and those kinds of things. So this shift to logic and science is a big deal. In architecture, we see the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns, which are still used today, very important features. You see some in the amphitheaters, where we have plays staged for Dionysus, one of the gods of the patron of the arts. Theater was considered a civic duty. It was a serious, hardworking business. They would be all day long. There'd be lots of plays done all day. And plays were as much about educating people about what was going on in the day as they were about entertainment. Really more about education than entertainment. Potters, sculptors, and architects worked within their unique political context. So everybody had both a political and civic function, as well as a reason to make their things beautiful or entertaining or lasting. So it wasn't just about art for art's sake. It was about art for the polis. This is a red figure pottery piece. Athenian tragedy and comedy in context. Drama is one of the Greeks' most quintessential. It's what represents them the best art forms. And these plays often had public and political purpose. Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides are some of the most famous Greek tragedians. They would engage the citizens with competitions and ideas, as their characters would give different points of view on some problem. So this is how the Athenians would find out about kind of what was going on, and what this was almost like old-fashioned commercials, kind of what am I supposed to think. The playwrights would tell them what they're supposed to think, and they would people would be able to pick the best ideas. By giving voice to opposing positions, the playwrights invited audience to make decisions on ethical issues. So, for one example, it said, do the laws of the state supersede moral or religious beliefs of the individual? And we have that same battle today. Does the government have the right to tell me to do something that conflicts with what I believe is morally right? And that's a decision that they had to make, is a decision people are still making today. Should we care when our actions result in the suffering of an enemy? We actually have the Geneva Convention, which establishes, a treatment of war criminals, because we believe um, in that idea of this question. But not everyone agrees. Not every country agrees with that idea. So these are still questions that they started asking that we still ask today. Um, Aristophanes creates a new art form, the comedy, and he made fun of politicians, and he featured a broad humor that was often sexual in nature. He might make fun of war when Athens was losing, for example. So it was very, very much like what a lot of our kind of sitcoms or Saturday Night Live kind of things are today. Here is the Greek columns, which we still, again, study and use in architecture today. So, back to the key questions that we started in part one. The thinkers and artists of the Hellenic era transformed their world and will continue to influence the modern world or Western culture for millennia to come. But is there a dark side to their achievement? And at whose expense does this culture flourishing come? Were there dangers in their overconfidence? And was democracy itself both a catalyst and a catastrophe? So, was Western achievement, did it come at a price? Is it worthwhile? What were the downsides of the achievements of the Greeks that influenced our culture so greatly? And that is the end of chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the Hellenic era, and hopefully we'll see you next chapter.